How's it going, guys? And welcome back to BL3's Forgotten, the series where I take a look at underused and not often talked about pieces of gear to determine whether or not they deserve to be remembered within the modern meta of the game or should be left behind and forgotten. And today we are taking a look at the Recursion. If you'd like to farm the Recursion for yourself, you're going to want to fast travel over to Desolation's Edge on Necrotafeo, taking the Desolation's Edge fast travel station. Exit the cave and head towards the right, following up along the path and through to the end, where you will find a save station right out front of General Tron's arena. Enter his arena, kill him, and you can get yourself the Recursion. The Projectile Recursion is a legendary Maliwan shotgun, able to roll with 2 of any of the elements except for non-elemental, and can roll with 1 or 2 projectiles per shot, or 3 or 4 ammo per shot respectively. The Projectile Recursion requires a brief charge-up time before firing out discs that deal elemental splash damage. These discs will bounce between enemies and deal splash damage with each bounce. The Recursion has only seen a single direct change, being a buff to increase the ricochet cap from 5 to 7. This is not the only change that has affected the Recursion though, and we'll get into that in a second here. Now this is maybe the gun's single most deserving of being called forgotten, at least when it comes to 3 of the 4 Vault Hunters. A lot of the weapons that I've covered in this series were never exactly remembered in the first place, but the Recursion used to be the top of the meta. Hell, it was the entire meta. This is the thing that benefited the most from the bonus element projectile duplication bug, which made it arguably the strongest gun in the entire game for quite some time. I mean, it could pretty consistently crash the game in a lot of areas. But for those that weren't there for the early days of BL3, what was this bug, you may be asking? And simply, if you were using a gun that had some sort of unlisted projectiles like the carrier or the Recursion with its ricochets, when used alongside any sort of bonus element, those unlisted projectiles would be duplicated entirely, as it would create whole new projectiles matching that element. So most often the Recursion would be used on Amara, as she has the most access to various bonus elemental sources, and with a single shot you would be completely wiping anything on your fucking screen. Now obviously this has since been patched and is what prompted that buff to the Recursion. But long after that meta, where does it leave this thing? Well, first off, let's talk ×1 versus ×2. ×1 is pretty average, honestly. It's alright, it's nothing too terrible, but it's not really why you use the Recursion. The point of it is obviously all that ricocheting, and to get the most ricochets you want more projectiles, as made obvious by how absurd this was with that bonus element bug. Even though your ammo consumption does take quite a hit, it's well worth it to use the ×2 pretty much all the time. It's more AoE and therefore more potential damage. This also obviously means that the Recursion has massive synergy with bonus projectiles. Plain Dirty, Infernal Wish, Two Fang, all of those are very good and make the Recursion feel so much better to use. If you plan to be using the Recursion heavily, I highly recommend using an Infernal Wish alongside those other 2 skills if applicable. The single target damage of the Recursion in most cases is also pretty shit, but again, that's not really what you're using the Recursion for, and in a mobbing setting, this thing slaps hard as fuck. Not only does it just activate the part of my brain that's just like, haha, bouncy disco, boing boing, monkey mode, ooh, ah, it's also just incredibly strong in that it is probably one of the most effective weapons at clearing out an entire horde of enemies. While it's definitely not the fucking map-wide nuke that it used to be, it's still definitely up there as a very good mobbing weapon. Especially once you start investing into it with an Infernal Wish and splash damage boosts, you really start to get far more out of it, and it starts to kind of look like its former self. But if you really want it to look like its former self, well, there is still a way to get a similar projectile duplication on ricochet interaction, and it's due to Zane's Eraser. And yes, this is a splash gun interacting with Eraser, you know where this is going. On crit, Eraser summons a whole new projectile. On weapons that have initial projectiles that don't go away on impact, this will duplicate them. So if you crit with a ×2 Recursion, the initial 2 will ricochet out along with 2 new projectiles. Those 2 new projectiles also now having Eraser damage on them, and also having splash damage and splash radius boost reapplied. So on Zane, with a ×2, an Infernal Wish, and Plain Dirty, you're getting 4 projectiles per shot, which have the potential to ricochet out into another 8, all of which also have a potential to duplicate if they crit, which if you throw on a Hustler, increases the chances of that happening drastically. When it comes to the Recursion, Zane is the new Amara. This is why it's only really forgotten on most of the Vault Hunters. If you're a Zane player, you probably do know about this, and if you're a Boar Explosion player, you probably use it often because it's fucking fun. It's really the only way nowadays that you can replicate what the recursion used to do. Overall though, the recursion is just a very solid weapon. It's not nearly as game-breaking as it used to be, but it's still very fun and does have the option to be game-breaking if you really set up for it. But even just using it as a normal gun and not abusing certain interactions with it, it's still very strong and still incredibly fun and visually appealing as well. Highly recommend giving it a go if you haven't in a while. But that's gonna about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there will be a link to down in the description below. And just under that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. But with that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.